Welcome back to Reynolds Runabouts, everybody. I'm Jeffrey Reynolds, and today I've reached a milestone. I've flipped the boat over, and I'm prepared to do the final minor repairs to the bottom, and then final fairing, priming, and painting, and then flip it back over and finish off the deck. So thankfully, this boat only has minor issues up here at the keel. So where the stem turns into the foot and then it connects to the keel. This came from the factory this way. And there's always a little bit of a hook, which is, thankfully this way, because you think the sand and the water are going to go like that. So the hook is kind of gone out of this piece. So I'm going to look at that and see if these are already, the holes are there, and I really don't want to alter that. So I might put a little stub scarf on the end of that just to get that hood and scarf so it's hooked. And then maybe put a little more gradual fairing between here and there, which is not, it just seems very abrupt. And it doesn't look like the keel was like that ever, but it should have been. So instead of using fairing compound, I'd much rather put a small oak stub on there and have a nice transition. So that will be my first project, and then I'll quickly go into putting fairing compound on all the fasteners that are holding the inner structure, the floor, the stringers, the inner keel, the keelson, and just get this thing polished up, smoothed out, and ready for primer. So on to the keel repair. So here's a better look at what I'm dealing with. So that is where the keel belongs. You can see this right here is just not, it's just so abrupt. And then if I turn it over, this is very deteriorated. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it here and put a graving piece in right here, and then I'll have it more faired to this, so it has more of a slope to it, and that'll go through the water better. It won't get hung up on anything, and I think it's just a better joint to have a hook in there and make sure it's just secure. So I'm going to do some cutting. So while the keel replacement tip is drying, I'm going to move on to some fairing of the hull. You can see I've got a lot of fastener holes. All of these are brand new rebedded silicon bronze fasteners that went in to the flooring and the stringers and the inner keelson. This is kind of fun. You can see other restorers have been here. Here's some, it's almost like auto bondo. Gray is better than pink. I don't know if I've ever seen pink that was marine. So what I do is I pick at these a little bit, and if they're solid, I leave them alone. They obviously were fine. Here's another one. This one I might try to pick out. It just looks a little too shaky. And then there's going to be areas like this where there's some wood damage. That's when I took out a screw, it popped it. So what'll happen is I'll rebed this and make sure I get that edge back. And then I'll go back through fairing with fairing compound. Whole idea is to use fairing compound for just small little indentations like screw holes and these. I don't really want to rebuild anything, which is why I decided I'm gonna put that new tip on the keel because I don't want to risk that. Shoot some glass or thickened resin under there. Make sure all these are nice and buttoned up. So here's a bad one. Bows are pretty normal. You'll see this is from hitting things. That's probably a dock, or I'm sorry, a trailer. Trailer roller came off and just caught the boat. But it's not too bad overall. There's a delaminated piece. I'll go ahead and put some thickened epoxy in there. Yeah, it's just safer to do it that. So I'm gonna get to work putting in a lot of Total Boats Total Fair epoxy filler. I've been using Total Boat Total Fair for some time. I love it. It's a two-part. So you got a little yellow here. I try not to do a lot of it because it'll get hard on you. And then gotta make sure you keep these paddles clean because you don't want to cross mix the blue and the green. So then I got some blue here, blue and yellow, I mean. So then I get some blue, and because it's 1-to-1, get your quantities the same, and you just mix them until it turns green, and then you can get to work. And you have about, I don't know, probably an hour at the most. My shop is probably colder than this was designed to be used, so it's a little stiff. So I bumped my heat up a little bit. Do a lot of fairing in the summer, and I guess I didn't really notice this being a problem with heat, but you can see it's turning green. I just want to get all that mixed up nice and good. I use I think it's a lucite. I had a bunch of lucite panels that were scraps or something, and I just cut them in little pallets so I can go ahead and grab a new one every time I need to. So here it is. It's green. Make sure I come across any blue. I'll mix it in there and just get at the boat. So I've done a few already, but to give you kind of an idea how it works, just get a little on your paddle there and push it in. Usually a double. I have to go back and do it. I'll sand these once, and then I'll see the imperfections that I missed, and I'll just go ahead and do it again. And when you're fairing, you're always noticing another one you missed, and so I just count on doing it at least 3 times. Little indents here. Sometimes the staples are coming through from the layup process back in 1960 when they were building this. They would put the strips on with hot glue and then staple them and then put them in the autoclave to cook it. So sometimes you'll see staples that were pretty, they were on the top there. That's fine. Nobody ever expected to see them. They were on the bottom of a boat and there's paint. So I'm going to keep going at this and knock this out. It's the next day, and the Total Fairing compound is hard. Usually 12 hours is pretty good for this stuff, especially if you have the heat up and it's dry. The epoxy that I used in some of these other areas, I can still feel a little bit of my fingernail will go into it, so I'll let that go for a full 24 hours. That's fine. Um, when you have thickener in it, it takes a little bit longer, so that's fine. So what I do, I use my orbital, random orbital, and I just gently float it over these strakes. This is, since it's a lap strake construction look, it's not true lap strake. This is planks, real wood planks laid on top of a molded plywood hull, which was smooth to give it a lap strake look, but it's still very much like a lap strake, except it doesn't leak. So I'm just going to float it over this. And these laps you have to watch, because here you have, it's convex, and then here concave. So when I do it, I kind of float it, and I always have my hand kind of turning the sander a little bit to follow that. And I'm feeling for, if I'm putting depressions in because of that edge, I might flip over to my little Black & Decker mouse, which is a triangle type. I just kind of do a little check to make sure I find the sander that's giving me what I want, and then I'll move over to that device. So, but 80 grit is pretty good. I have found less than 80 grit, the 120s just doesn't cut it enough. I'm probably, because of epoxy, you have to be careful that the spot where the epoxy is that you're doing is hard versus the wood around it. So you have to be very careful that you're focusing heavily on the patch and not necessarily the wood around, or you'll get a depression. So it's kind of a process. You have to be careful about it. But I did strip this boat with this sander using 80, so I'm pretty comfortable with its ability to do what I want. So I'm going to get at that, and as you can see, I've got several hundred holes. I have not counted them, but it'll take a while. And then I'll go back over it again with areas that need it. We'll get another application of that total fairing compound, so I get a smooth surface. And as I go along, I'm always finding more. And when you put the first coat of primer on the paint, it always shows you stuff you missed. But after I get done with the second coat of this, I'm going to put Smith's clear penetrating epoxy on it to give it to seal these planks completely, probably 3 or 4 coats until it stops soaking it in, and then we'll do the primer. So lots to do before that. So you saw me using the wood rasp to put the final profile on this repair. This is the area, remember, that I had to recreate the laps from the inside, and I had molds out here, so it came out pretty good. I faired it a little bit, and then I recreated that profile. Be a little bit of putty right here. There was a little bit of rot there, so I'll put some putty in there to get that plank to be where I want it. And then, yeah, that'll be it for that. And then we can get ready for the Smith's CPES to seal the bottom. So there's the keel graving piece in place and roughly shaped. I'm going to when I glue that down with 5200 and fasten it, I'll go ahead and shape it. So what I want to do, I want to follow this keel or the stem and then gradually have it mold into the keel itself. And I'm going to do that in place. So it's just so much easier. I can see it. And I'll just go in there with 80 grit and just shape it. So call that project done. I'm finished the last of the remaining paint that was left on this boat. I did strip it months ago, but I left this area because I always wanted to spend a little more time looking at this water line. Usually the water lines are right below the rubber or the spray rails. In fact, on my other boats, I've split that, makes a nice paint line. You can cover that edge. Here, it's a great place to end it because it's right where the molded plywood and the lap addition was put on, but they left even a little more, um, which I'm putting a boot line at this chine would have been really hard and problematic. It could have looked uneven. So I see what the builder was doing. He, even though it might be better to drop it down, he scored the water line, which is great. Um, I've seen them do that on higher end boats like Chris Crafts and things, with they'll mark periodically. You'll see a chisel mark um, where they can put their tape, and they always know where the water line is when you sand it down. This is scored deeply into the plywood, and I didn't see it until now because I was finishing sanding it. So I left it in there, and it's clearly a 3/4 inch boot stripe or water line out of gold. And I just measured it's again 3/4. So what I'm doing is I'm leaving, it isn't hard. I just lightly sand over that area and know that that gold boot stripe is going to be below the scribed mark. And even though it might technically should be up here, I'm going to put my laser level on it just for fun to see what it looks like and see how close he was. Um, it's typical for a water line to drop at the bow, and it always looked a little odd. Um, looks very odd when the boat's upside down and it's in your shop. On the water, it looks completely normal because the water is level, and the water line obviously is right where it belongs, and it optically it looks fine. Somehow, when it's not in the water and it's upside down and in your shop, it doesn't look right, but the level never lies. So I will do that as soon as I get done with this. I'm going to put my level on it and just see what it looks like. So I'm going to get this all smoothed out as I prepare for um, putting on the Smith CPS tomorrow, and knowing that my water line will always be where I can find it, I can go back and put that gold paint on. What will happen is the white bottom, I mean, you overlap it, into the water line. So there's kind of like this limbo land where you can put the white and the black, and then the gold covers it. Obviously it'll be smooth, but it'll be kind of erratic as you see black and white merging as one. Um, the gold covers that. So boot stripes are kind of fun because they can really cover up a lot of, um, if you make mistakes on your bottom or top paint, um, the line isn't correct or something, the boot stripe makes a nice detail, and your eye is drawn to the boot stripe, and if it's straight, the rest of it looks great. So I'm going to get going on finishing this, and then I'll get the level out. So I'm at another milestone. The keel has had its new end put on it. I've got it checked for drill. Everything's good. I'm going to put a lot of number 12 3-inch into this. It's a big piece of lumber going into an inner keel or a keelson on the bottom of the boat. I put on my tape because I learned from doing the splash rails I should follow my own advice and put down blue tape so that it saves you on the mess. I was able to use my reciprocating saw with the smooth blade. I made pretty quick work of it, but it was time I didn't need to spend. I could have just maybe done tape. maybe putting tape on things takes longer. I'm not sure, but I do know from the experience of working on the inside of the boat with 5200, I was able to do all my application, did some fillets, and then I was able to pull that tape off, and it was so much easier to clean up. So done the blue tape again here. It's going to be a tiny fillet on this keel to hull. I really like a smooth joint, so it's going to be very small if you can see it at all. So got everything ready and I put down Smith's penetrating epoxy sealer yesterday. So this has all been sealed, ready to go. This has been sealed, 5200, tight big screws. And then tomorrow I will go ahead and put the rest of the Smiths on this in preparation for the primer. I just wanted to get this keel on because it just worked out well in the sequence of work. So I'm going to just start doing that. The builder ran number 6 screws of a piece of trim down most of the keel, which is a great idea. I haven't seen anybody do that on a molded plywood boat or even any of the boats I've worked on. You'll see them up there in the front, kind of a makeshift cutwater, and sometimes it'll come right down to the end of the stem in the foot area to give you a little protection, trailer or something else you might run into. This will give it a lot more protection. The aluminum will take a beating for sure, but it's better than the keel. And the keel looks really good because of that. I've done a lot more work on keels on the top surface that got beat up on trailers and sandbars and stuff, so it's a nice touch. So I'm going to put a piece on there too. This is going to be, I hope, some of the last 5200 I have to deal with on this boat. But I have about 3/4 of a tube left, and I have to do some interior fastening yet. Some of the, like the engine well box, and the floor, the front cockpit floor frame I left loose because the owner needs to add some length to it, meaning he's taller than the original builder. So I'm going to go ahead and keep that separate and then go ahead and do some customization for the owner so he's happy with the fit. The time and money that has gone into this boat, you have to have a happy experience. And that's an easy fix. I'll do some figuring and get that so that he's comfortable, and I know he'll be comfortable with it. So, all right, we've got that applied. And the next step is for me to put that on there and go ahead and start fastening. The moment of truth. So, all right, good squeeze out there. That's where it's most important. And like I said, I'm going to do a little bit of work up there once this thing is in place, just to get that nose where I like it. So we start out with some smaller screws up here in the front, because the keel isn't as thick. I'm going to do this one and the one in the back. Because I want this thing to be straight. So I'm going to go get another 1.5 inch one here. I'm going to go to the back. Great squeeze out. I love hearing those screws bear down. I'm going to go ahead and throw the rest of those in and do a little cleanup with my palette knives, and we'll be done with this project. So I got all the screws in. Silicon bronze, number 12s, 1.5 on the ends, 3 on the in the middle, and got great squeeze out. So what I want to do is I'm just going to try to pull. If I see any gaps, like I can see it just sticking out a little bit, I want to push some back in there, a little bit of a fillet. This is a hugely important part of the boat, and water egress and other issues of banging and wear and tear. And taping it, that's handy to put stuff on, isn't it? So it's really looking good. I'm just going to run this really thin bead down this, and you can take your spatula or your knife, and you push on it. You can push all the glue away too, and it's a whole lot cleaner than pulling. I'll pull it when I want to do fill, like I want to make sure I'm fill it. But there we go. Get that nice and cleaned up. There'll be a little bit of sanding, but I'll get better as I go along. So I'm going to finish that and call this one done. So now that I've got my fillet where I want it, I just take the square version of that palette knife and I run it along the bottom and I bring it out just a bit because I don't want to dig any out of that joint. But I also want to get both the side of the keel and the tape. And you can see how that's peeling that right up. And this is a clean joint with very little residue. A little bit of hand sanding and I'll be good. And the most satisfying part of the job, pulling the tape from your work. Again, why I did not follow my own advice the last time I did this 5200 application is beyond me. It's just such a clean way to finish. Especially with a wide tape, you can get your bare hand in here and not have to worry about it. And bam, all done. Well, that'll end this episode. I've decided that I'm going to finish this minor fairing on the sides of the boat and the rub rail. I went ahead and just thought I did get it all dialed in before I put any paint on it. The paint is going to come, down to here, and then there's a split where the rub rail and the covering board met. There's a piece of trim that goes there. I'm going to overlap that obviously with black and primer, and then when I flip the boat back over, I'll be able to address the top of the rub rail, the covering board, and get it all fair from the surface of the boat versus trying to do it now, which is not a good idea. And then I'll put another coat. Well, I'll put a coat of the Smith's penetrating epoxy on the hull as well to not only seal in my new fairing compound patches, nice overlap with the bottom area that's already been done, and also I'll do the covering board, the rub rail at the same time. That'll be all done. So the paint will come down in the next episode and down here, and then the following episode, when I flip the boat over to start doing the deck work, I'll just put my paint on at the same time up on the top. So getting paint to stick from the bottom up, well, it may work. I'm not comfortable with that. So that'll be the end of this episode. Thank you for tuning in. If you're not a subscriber, please do so. It's always handy to get those reminders on Wednesdays. Every 2 weeks is what I'm shooting for. And if you're enjoying the programs enough to hit the like button, please do. It's always nice to receive positive feedback. And of course, if you have any comments, put them down below. Try to keep them positive and If you have questions that something I didn't cover completely, need to know the answer to, I can certainly do that as soon as I can get to it. So until then, have a good week.